Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a world of flickering torchlight, wooden clogs slapping through muddy streets, and the distinct smell of everything decaying at once. Welcome to medieval Europe, where you, modern human that you are, would barely last a week. You've got no immunities, no tolerance for cold, drafty rooms. Let's be honest, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where and when people are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive in a bustling medieval town, and it hits you like a donkey cart to the nose. The air is thick with smoke, manure, and the distinct perfume of people who haven't bathed since Christmas. And it's June. The streets are ankle-deep in mud, waste, and discarded fish bones. There's no sanitation system, just gutters and the occasional servant emptying chamber pots out of second-story windows with a warning yell of "Guard Lou!" If you miss that shout, well, it's raining, but not water. You stumble past a blacksmith pounding iron, his sweat mixing with soot and spit. The clang rings in your ears. Children, barefoot and smeared in grime, dart between stalls, shrieking like gremlins. An old woman sells pies from a cart, but you hesitate when you see a rat perched casually on her shoulder, nibbling the crust. A man approaches and tries to sell you sacred toenail clippings of a local saint. You politely decline and nearly trip over a chicken. The line between indoors and outdoors is blurred. Goats sleep in bedrooms, dogs wander freely, and pigs root through refuse in the alleys. You expected something quaint, but instead this feels like being trapped in a Renaissance fair that's gone rogue. Historians still argue whether the stench was as constant as the records suggest or if medieval noses simply adapted. But judging by your current gag reflex, the answer doesn't matter. You can't escape it. You duck into what looks like a tavern, desperate for shelter, only to be met with more smoke, ale-soaked wood, and raucous laughter. A toothless bard strums a lute in the corner, singing about a knight who married a goose. It's unclear whether this is metaphor or autobiography. The innkeeper eyes you with suspicion. You're not wearing a badge from the local guild, and your clothes scream foreign. Outside again, a man in robes stands on a crate, preaching about the end of days. You'd laugh, but he's surrounded by an eager crowd who nod gravely. Apparently they've seen omens. A red cow gave birth to twins, and someone swears the moon turned green last week. Superstition is their science, and you're realizing that logic and reasoning are not strong currencies here. And then there's the noise. No gentle hum of electronics, just clattering hooves, shouts, bells, and the constant hacking cough of tuberculosis doing its rounds. Every building is wood or stone, but not the polished kind. Everything's jagged, handmade, and slightly damp. You try to find a clear path, but it's like navigating a pinball machine designed by rats. One cheerful note. You pass a group of musicians playing bagpipes, drums, and what might be a hurdy-gurdy. They're not terrible, just loud. You try to clap along, but earn confused stares. Applause isn't a thing here, not yet. A young boy offers to clean your shoes for a copper coin, though his method is just wiping them with his already filthy tunic. You hand him a coin out of pity, and he disappears into the crowd like a Dickensian ghost child. You make a mental note. Pity is expensive in this era, and then it hits you again. The realization that you can't go home. Your phone has no signal. There's no hotel. You have no idea how to even find food that won't make you violently ill. Remember that bakery you saw? They mix chalk into the flour to save money. Yes, chalk for texture. By now, your feet are soaked, Your throat is dry, and you've developed a mysterious itch on your ankle. A local dog sniffs you and growls. A passing nobleman doesn't even glance your way, but his servant smacks you with a switch for standing too close. Welcome to the social ladder. Hope you like being the bottom rung. You try to sit on a stoop to collect yourself, but the homeowner storms out, threatening you with a broom and yelling something about vagrants. You nod politely and shuffle off, internally screaming. For fun, let's say you try to rent a room. You'll need to know someone who can vouch for you, speak the dialect, and not appear possessed by foreign demons. Easy, right? If they don't like your accent, they might accuse you of sorcery. And you do look suspiciously clean. Quirky historical tidbit. Some towns in the 14th century had professional muck rakers, people who shoveled poop for a living. Surprisingly, it paid decently. Of course, their life expectancy was roughly, well, not great. As night falls, the streets get darker than you ever imagined. No street lamps, just the occasional torch or candle flickering through a shuttered window. You can barely see your hand in front of your face. Every creak and howl turns your stomach to ice. Is that a wolf? A drunk? Something worse? You huddle beside a church wall, trying to look invisible. The stones are cold. The air bites. And the wind smells like cabbage soup and fear. This is not a dream. It's the Middle Ages. And you are so unprepared. You wake up curled against the cold stone wall of the church, your neck stiff and your back sore in that uniquely medieval way, caused by damp stone, uneven cobbles, and the absence of a chiropractor for several hundred years. The bells toll faintly in the distance, dragging you from shallow, twitchy sleep. It's morning, allegedly. The sky is a flat gray. Rain isn't falling, but the air still feels wet, like it's holding its breath. Your clothes, now thoroughly wrinkled and faintly manure-scented, cling to your body in unpleasant places. A rooster crows, not charmingly, but with all the rage of a demon banished from hell and forced to live next to a pigsty. You groan. Time to face another glorious medieval day. You trudge toward what looks like a peasant's cottage. It's a low structure with wattle and daub walls and a thatched roof that sags like an old man's back. There's a hole where a window should be, plugged partially by a pig's bladder stretched taut. You knock, or rather, you tap the creaky wooden frame and hope someone inside doesn't mistake you for a burglar, or worse, a tax collector. Inside, a woman in a threadbare linen shift gestures you in. She's already up, stoking a fire that's more smoke than flame. Her hair's tied back in a scarf, her hands dark with soot and flour. You thank her awkwardly. She grunts. The cottage is one room. That's it. The family's all here, bleary-eyed and yawning. 3 kids, a grandmother snoring near the hearth, and a goat. The bed is a single straw-stuffed sack, shared by everyone like it's a communal beanbag of itchy sadness. You try not to stare. This is your morning now. Let's talk bathing. Except no one does. Maybe once a year. Twice if they're fancy. You look around for a wash basin. There's a chipped bowl of water near the hearth with a film of something mysterious floating on top. The woman dunks a cloth in it, wipes the baby's face, then hands it to her eldest to clean her own. It's a game of bacterial hopscotch. You pass on the offer when it comes to you. Historians still argue whether people in the Middle Ages truly avoided bathing out of fear of disease, or if the infrastructure just made it so inconvenient that nobody bothered. Either way, you smell like history now. Breakfast is served, a bowl of pottage. Think of it as beige stew made of water, oats, leeks, and whatever else they found in the field. It's been stewing for days, weeks even. New ingredients just get tossed in. It's food, but just barely. You sip carefully. It tastes like wet bark and garlic dreams. A small miracle. You keep it down. One of the children sneezes into the pot. No one reacts. You start to cry a little, quietly. You try to help by sweeping the dirt floor. Except it's made of dirt. You mostly just move twigs from one corner to another. A chicken wanders in. The goat follows. You give up. Dressing yourself is the next chore. The woman hands you a tunic. It's stiff with something that might be soup or might be decades of human essence. You try not to think too hard. The fabric is wool, but not the cozy kind. It's the scratchy, please stop touching me kind. Underwear optional. Lice included free of charge. A quirky medieval fact for you, some people used fox pelts as undergarments, hoping the scent would repel fleas. The result? Well, you can imagine. Spoiler, it didn't work. You walk outside, newly clothed and somehow even less comfortable than before. The town is waking up. Fires are being lit. Bread is baking somewhere in the distance, but you're suspicious. Remember they use sawdust and bean paste when wheat is short. A man walks by chewing something suspiciously. He spits on the ground and offers you some. It's bread with mashed onions and bits of lard. You decline, which offends him deeply. He mutters something about high-born manners and scurries off. You've made your first enemy. You think maybe you'll wash your face, just to feel human again. There's a nearby stream, narrow and slow. You kneel and splash your face. The water is bracing and cold, also suspiciously brown. You freeze when you notice a sheep carcass bobbing downstream. Welcome to medieval hygiene, nature-flavored. A pair of monks walk by, humming softly. They look peaceful until you realize they're actively ignoring the beggar coughing blood in the gutter. You offer the man some bread from your pocket, and he gives you a half-toothless smile in return. It's warm and human until he starts vomiting again. You back away, gently. Remember, medicine hasn't yet grasped germ theory. Disease is caused by bad smells, angry spirits, or an unfortunate astrological alignment. You wonder how many constellations are currently plotting your downfall. A rooster charges you, and you run for the relative safety of a stable, where a boy is milking a cow and humming a song about a woman with 17 children, none of whom survived past age 3. It's a lullaby, apparently. Time passes slowly in the morning hours. You can't scroll, can't Google, can't even journal unless you have ink, parchment, and the rare ability to write. You stare at a wooden spoon for 30 minutes. It's the most stimulation you've had all day. But eventually, the sounds of the village shift. Blacksmiths start hammering. Vendors yell about eels. Children shriek with delight as they chase a cat through the mud. And through it all, you realize this is normal. This is the rhythm of life here, unfiltered, unclean, unforgiving, and it's only 9 a.m. You try smiling through the discomfort as the village wakes up around you. The rooster is still giving you the stink eye, but at least you're no longer sleeping in the street. That's progress, right? You glance around and realize the entire town is chewing. Not food, though. Sticks. They're using what's called a chew stick, a frayed twig jabbed repeatedly into teeth to scrape off whatever horror last night's dinner left behind. Someone offers you one. It tastes like bitter pine and regret. Still, you give it a try, pretending it's artisanal toothpaste. But after a few pokes, your gums start to bleed. Turns out dental care in the Middle Ages is just aggressive tree violence. You look around for alternatives. Maybe there's a bar of soap or a rinsing bowl. Nope. Just a bucket with a dead wasp in it. The woman from the cottage offers you her family's tooth powder, which is made from crushed bones and ashes. You take one sniff and politely decline. Historians still argue whether medieval people genuinely cared about oral hygiene, or whether the few tooth-cleaning practices recorded were reserved for the wealthy. Judging by the state of everyone's smiles around here, what few teeth remain, You're guessing it wasn't a community priority. You spot an older man in the market grinning proudly. His front teeth are missing, and the gaps whistle when he talks. He boasts that he only has a few bad teeth left, which, in this era, is basically winning the lottery. Toothless by 20 is not an exaggeration. It's practically a badge of honor. You, being a proud 21st century dental patient with fluoride in your past and floss in your drawer, are beginning to panic. What if something goes wrong? What if your gums swell up? What if you get a toothache? Bad news? There's no dentist. Or rather there is, but it's the same guy who shoes horses. You find him near the edge of town. He's large, wearing a leather apron, and smells like iron and warm meat. When you mention your hypothetical toothache, he chuckles and holds up a pair of rusty pliers. "I'll fix it," he says cheerfully. Head or heart? You don't answer. You just slowly back away. Quirky fact: some medieval remedies for toothaches included baked mouse paste, boiling vinegar, or, if you were fancy, a touch of powdered unicorn horn. Spoiler: it was probably narwhal tusk, which doesn't help at all. You overhear a woman in the square recommending tying a dead toad around the jaw to draw out pain. Another suggests chanting a prayer backward during a full moon. A third swears by placing a warmed cabbage leaf behind the ear. Everyone has a cure, and none of them inspire confidence. But let's say your tooth does need to come out. What's the procedure? Well, you sit in a chair. If you're lucky, someone holds you down. If you're unlucky, they don't bother. The barber, or blacksmith, or whoever drew the shortest straw, sticks a metal hook in your mouth, grabs the tooth, and yanks. No anesthesia, no antiseptic, just a scream, a spurt of blood, and a "next" before you've even stood up. If the tooth shatters, they go digging. If it gets infected, you probably die. If you live, they pour a bit of wine or vinegar in the socket and tell you to chew bread on the other side. Dental surgery, medieval edition. You retreat to the square again, trying to think happy thoughts. Like how much you miss your electric toothbrush and that minty sting of modern mouthwash. You fantasize about a dental hygienist gently reminding you to floss, while soft jazz plays in the background. Instead, a boy walks past gnawing on a bone, his teeth worn down like river stones. He's 10. To distract yourself, you try smiling at a few locals. They smile back, sort of. It's more a toothless grimace, like everyone's stuck halfway between joy and indigestion. One old woman grins wide and reveals a single molar, clinging on for dear life. It's black. You decide not to make further eye contact. It turns out sugar is rare here. That should help, right? Less candy, fewer cavities. Not quite. The bread is coarse and full of grit. Millstones leave tiny rock fragments in the flour. Eating it slowly files your teeth down. Every bite is like gentle dental erosion. Delicious. Some nobles, however, do have sugar. Thanks to trade routes from the east, it's considered a luxury, almost medicinal. So they rub it on their gums or chew it as a treat and, ironically, suffer the worst rot of all. A blackened smile was practically a flex if you were rich enough to afford sugar. And speaking of the rich, they at least had access to rudimentary dental tools, ivory scrapers, golden toothpicks, or strange herbal concoctions rubbed on the gums. But even royalty didn't escape the inevitable. One French king had all his teeth pulled at once to cure a headache. It didn't work. Shocking, I know. Historians still debate how many medieval people actually reached old age with teeth intact. The answer: not many. Skeletons from the era often show severe tooth decay, abscesses, and signs of infections that likely turned fatal. All from a simple cavity. You press your tongue nervously against your own molars. They feel fine, for now. But the idea of biting into anything hard fills you with dread. The markets are full of walnuts, turnips, dried meat, and stale bread, each a potential dental death trap. The goat from earlier walks by and chews something thoughtfully. You feel envious. At least he's built for this. Finally, you return to the peasant cottage to rest your brain and your jaw. The mother hands you a thin broth to sip, probably out of pity. It's warm and soft, and you can slurp it without risk. Victory. As the day drifts on, you lie down by the hearth, gently fingering your teeth, whispering sweet nothings to them like a desperate lover. Stay with me. I need you. The fire crackles, the goat snores, and your dreams are full of floss. You wake with a start, not from a bad dream, but because your tunic is making your skin crawl, literally. Something is moving, several somethings. You scratch, and out falls a tiny black dot. Flee. You shake your sleeve, and 3 more tumble out like confetti from hell. Welcome to medieval fashion, where what's trending is less about aesthetics and more about what you can wear without collapsing from heat stroke or infestations. You stand slowly, your joints stiff, and start peeling off layers, hoping to find some relief. But your only choices are more wool, less wool, or slightly damp wool. Let's get you dressed. First, a scratchy linen undershirt that's been washed maybe 3 times since the last plague. Then a tunic, cinched with a braided belt. If you're feeling fancy or unfortunate, there's a woolen overcoat, thick and heavy enough to double as a weighted blanket. Good for the cold, sure. But it holds on to everything. Smoke, grease, fleas, and the lingering smell of wet goat. Footwear flat, leather shoes with thin soles that offer the same protection as wrapping your feet in soggy crackers. Laces are a luxury. Most villagers just tie rope around their ankles and hope for the best. Now comes the headwear. Men might wear a coif, basically a bonnet that screams, "I know nothing of joy." Women wear veils, hoods, or wimples that cling to the face like fabric leeches. And if you're upper class, congratulations. You get even more layers. Brocade gowns, pointed shoes that require walking like a duck, and hats that could double as bird perches. Historians still argue whether certain fashion rules came from royal decree or just pure social madness. Either way, the sumptuary laws are real, and they're watching you. Yes, the medieval authorities actually regulated what people could wear, based on their social rank. You try on a fine cloak you found in a nearby stall, just for fun, and immediately attract suspicious glares. A man tells you to remove it unless you want to be fined for dressing above your station. You nod. Peel it off. Suddenly appreciate the scratchy sackcloth like its designer. Quirky fact, the longer your shoe's pointed toes, the higher your status. Some nobles had shoes with 2-foot-long points, sometimes tied to their knees to avoid tripping. Function none. But fashion is pain, right? Your own shoes are simple, cracked, and let in cold puddle water with every step. It's like walking in tea bags. You miss socks. You miss arch support. You miss the concept of hygiene as a baseline standard. And don't even think about washing your clothes. Laundry day is a once-a-month affair, if that. You drag your tunic to the river, scrub it with lye and river stones, and hope the current doesn't carry it away. Soap is rare. Smells are just part of the wardrobe. Back at the cottage, the peasant woman picks knits from her daughter's hair. It's a family bonding ritual. She offers to do yours too. You decline, firmly. But a few minutes later, you catch her eyeing your scalp anyway. Trust is a delicate thread in this timeline. As you head out again, you pass a local noble's procession. His doublet gleams, puffed sleeves flounce dramatically, and his boots shine like freshly oiled meat. His servants, who look like they haven't blinked in 3 days, carry a tray of perfumed gloves. The scent follows them like an expensive cloud. You reach out to touch the fabric of his cloak, but stop short. The guards don't look like they'd hesitate to stab a peasant. That means you. Still, it's hard not to admire the elegance. Until you remember that noble fashion often used lead-based powders and mercury dyes. One wrong sweat, and their beautiful garments became deadly toxins on fabric. Historians still debate how much these clothes actually harmed people. Were nobles aware of the risk, or was ignorance just really fashionable? By midday, the sun peeks through the clouds. It's warm. You begin sweating under 3 layers of wool. There's no escape. You try removing the outer layer, but modesty laws suggest that even bare forearms could be scandalous. You weigh your options: heat stroke or social exile. You spot a woman wearing a robe so long, it drags through mud and animal droppings. It looks elegant from a distance. Up close, it smells like a compost heap in formal wear. She smiles kindly, offers a bit of advice. Rub rosemary on your neck to smell nicer. You try it. For 30 seconds, you feel slightly regal, until a bee lands on you. You yelp. The villagers stare. A small child calls you foolish spirit. You walk away, humbled, scratching your neck again. Even bedtime isn't a relief. You share a lumpy mattress with 3 people and a cat that refuses to move. You can't stretch your legs fully. The blankets are wool again. If you're lucky, they've only been used by 2 generations before you. A fun bit of fashion trivia. People slept naked or in long shifts, which they rarely changed. Nightcaps were popular, not the fun kind, but floppy bonnets that trapped lice and dreams alike. You finally collapse into sleep, exhausted, itchy, and more aware of your clothing than ever before. Every seam scratches, every thread tickles. And somewhere deep down, you know that no amount of modern detergent could ever truly remove what medieval fashion has done to your soul. You wake at dawn to the sound of hooves outside the cottage, and a rooster with the vocal intensity of a fire alarm. Your back aches, your arms are sore, and the itchy blanket you clutched through the night has left you with the faint aroma of fermented sheep. But you're about to discover something even more brutal than medieval bedding. Medieval farming. The peasant family has already started their day. The father's out in the fields, his boots caked in yesterday's mud and manure, his face carved by years of wind and worry. He hands you a wooden hoe and points to a stretch of hard, unforgiving soil. You've barely swung it 3 times before your hands start to blister. Turns out, there's no ergonomic grip on medieval tools, just wood, splinters, and pain. The plot of land you're working is small but somehow endless. The dirt is heavy, and every rock feels like a personal insult. You're planting turnips, which, incidentally, you now hate. The seeds are tiny, the rows uneven, and the goat keeps trying to eat your progress. You can't even be mad at it. Honestly, you kind of wish you were a goat. And this is just one day. For medieval peasants, it's life. No weekends, no PTO, no treat-yourself coffee breaks. The only time you stop farming is when you're asleep, dead, or forcibly conscripted into a local baron's squabble over land, shaped like a chicken. Historians still argue whether serfs had any leisure time, or if the feast day breaks noted in church records were more about prayer and forced fasting than rest. Either way, there's no hammock in sight. Let's talk diet, since you're burning calories faster than you can mutter curses under your breath. Medieval peasants ate mostly bread, pottage, and whatever they could grow. Meat was rare. Cheese was a miracle. Eggs, don't make them laugh. You get a snack mid-morning, a chunk of dry bread with a smear of lard. It tastes like salted regret. Your stomach growls, but you eat every crumb, because that's it until dusk. Oh, and you drank water, rookie mistake. That stream isn't just for washing and garbage. It's also where people, animals, and disease all hang out. You're better off with weak ale or cider, which is technically hydrating and slightly less lethal. Still, your options are Monmouth's buzzed or ill, so pick your poison. There's no tractor, no irrigation system, and definitely no fertilizer. Unless you count human waste, which they do. It's not even the worst part. The worst part is watching the weather like it's a vengeful god. Which, to be fair, everyone kind of believes it is. Too much rain, your crops rot. Not enough, your crops crisp. A weird wind. Well, good luck explaining that when it triggers a village-wide panic about witches. Quirky historical tidbit. In some regions, farmers hired people to bless their fields with songs or spells. Sometimes they'd walk the perimeter with a lit candle. Sometimes they'd bury a dead toad in the soil for good luck. You eye the goat. Just in case. Midday, you're allowed to rest. Briefly, you collapse in the shade of a cart, your entire body humming with new and exciting pains. The peasant woman brings you a warm bowl of something. Pottage again. This one's beige with a hint of sadness and a single turnip chunk. You chew slowly, like someone reliving every bad decision that led to this timeline. You notice a neighboring farmer arguing with his son about field boundaries. The stakes are high. Land equals food, and food equals life. But instead of lawyers or surveys, they resolve it with a shouting match, a bit of shoving, and eventually a stone-throwing contest. Guess who wins? No one. Except the goat, who now has 2 turnips. By afternoon, it's time to tend to animals. You help muck the pigsty, which involves a shovel, a strong stomach, and deep personal reflection. You try to pet a cow, and it licks your sleeve, then sneezes in your face. The chickens peck your boots. You've never felt less in control of your life. You meet a farmhand who proudly shows off his oxen yoke. It's hand-carved, creaky, and has been passed down through 4 generations. He says it with the pride of someone showing off a sports car. You nod, trying to seem impressed, while also trying not to faint. You're learning quickly. Everything here is reused, repurposed, repaired. Nothing is wasted because nothing can be. A broken tool could mean the difference between eating and starving. That cracked hoe you hate. Someone will spend hours fixing it tonight by candlelight. Historians still debate whether crop yields during this period were as low as the records suggest, or if exaggerations were made to gain sympathy, or lower taxes. But even in the best-case scenario, farming was a back-breaking grind with no guarantees. You try planting some rye. The soil's dry, and your knees ache from crouching. A boy next to you hums a tune while flicking beetles off the plants. He's maybe 12 and already stronger than you'll ever be. You ask him if he goes to school. He laughs. Then he throws a beetle at you. By sunset, you're crusted in mud, blistered and hallucinating mildly from exhaustion. The sky glows red. The goat finally stops trying to eat your tunic and lies down, as if to say, "You survived, barely." You return to the cottage. The family is eating the rest of the day's pottage. The children fight over who gets the biggest chunk of cabbage. You don't care. You just drink your weak ale, curl up in the corner, and wonder how early retirement works when you don't technically exist on paper. Your modern brain screams for a salad, a smoothie, anything green and clean. But your medieval stomach, it's adapting, slowly, tragically. Sleep takes you fast. Your dreams are just endless rows of turnips and a goat in a judge's robe declaring you're not even trying. You're rudely awakened by shouting in the square and the unmistakable clang of a bell. It's not the church bell, though. This one's smaller, sharper, and far more ominous. Someone's been accused of a crime, and the town is about to respond in the least helpful way possible. You shuffle outside, bleary-eyed and still half covered in pottage stains. A crowd is gathering fast. They part briefly to reveal a boy, maybe 14, being dragged by 2 men in rough uniforms, his offense stealing a crust of bread from the baker's stall. You flinch instinctively. That could have been you yesterday, hovering a little too long by the loaves. Justice here doesn't come in the form of courtrooms and defense attorneys. It comes as a bucket of cold water, a wooden pillory, or, if things get serious, a trip to the gallows. There's no Miranda rights, no presumption of innocence, just public spectacle and a whole lot of screaming. You try to quietly slip away, but a hand lands on your shoulder. It's the baker. He's squinting at you. Weren't you loitering near my stand yesterday? You stammer. Explain. Point at your empty pockets and try to look harmless, like an extremely itchy puppy. But he's unconvinced. Foreign, no trademark, strange clothes. You're now suspicious by default. Next thing you know, you're hauled before the Reeve. Basically a town sheriff slash admin slash mediator with a bad haircut and a suspicious mole. He squints at you. You attempt to speak, but your modern accent sounds ridiculous here, like you're impersonating a noble who swallowed a flute. Historians still argue how much due process was truly followed in lower courts. Some records suggest fairness. Others imply it was all about who shouted louder and who could bribe best. Today, it's definitely not your day. You're shoved into the local holding cell, which isn't so much a cell as a sunken room under a tavern. The door creaks ominously. You're in. It's pitch dark. The walls drip. The straw floor squelches. There's a bucket in the corner and something alive in the other corner, probably a rat. Maybe two. They seem friendly, but you're not taking applications for new roommates right now. Quirky fact. Some medieval prisons charged rent. You'd have to pay for your own shackles, straw, food, and even bribes to avoid worse treatment. Yes, it was possible to go bankrupt while already imprisoned. You chuckle bitterly. It echoes creepily. You sit, knees pulled to your chest, trying not to breathe too deeply. The smell is rich, aged. Notes of mold, wet wool, and the general despair of everyone who's ever passed through. You'd rate it 3 stars on Yelp, but that would require time travel and mercy. Hours pass, maybe more. No clocks, no sunlight. Just the occasional footstep above and the distant laughter of drunk men playing dice. You try to rest, but the rat starts grooming itself loudly. You whisper a polite request for quiet. It ignores you. Rude. Eventually, you're pulled back into daylight. Your eyes burn. The Reeve is there again, this time with a bored-looking scribe who clearly hates his job. The baker points dramatically. That's the one, or someone like him. The crowd isn't sure. And then comes your saving grace, the peasant woman from the cottage. She steps forward. He works our field, she says. Technically not a lie. You did plant half a row of turnips before collapsing. That counts, right? The Reeve waves a hand. Next time, he says, wear a mark of trade. You're released. Sort of. There's no paperwork, no receipt, just a general vibe that you're now being watched. You walk away, trying to avoid eye contact with everyone. Your arms still itch from the straw bedding, and you smell like mildew and judgment. You've had a brush with the law and learned a hard truth. Medieval justice is fast, loose, and mostly theater. Back at the cottage, the family pretends they didn't hear the commotion. The father hands you a pitchfork. Back to work, he grunts. You nod, grateful. Who knew turnips would feel like salvation? But your reputation has changed. People glance at you differently, some with pity, some with suspicion. You're now that guy, the one who maybe stole something, or didn't. Either way, you're part of town lore now. That evening, you pass the pillory in the square. The bread thief is still there, hands and head locked in place, with a few kids throwing turnip peels at him. You catch his eye and wonder which of you had the worst day. Quirky medieval twist. Sometimes, instead of prison, your punishment was humiliation. Stand in the stocks, carry a stone through town, or walk barefoot across thorns while reciting a psalm. Was it justice or performance art? Historians still debate that, too. You finally reach the cottage and lie down, exhausted. Jail time, even medieval jail time, takes a lot out of you. You cough once. Dust, maybe mildew, maybe plague. You shiver. Sleep comes fast, but it's uneasy. You dream of the Reeve chasing you with a baguette, yelling something about taxes and goat theft. You wake up clutching your straw pillow like a lifeline. You survive the justice system, but barely. You wake up needing to pee. Simple enough, right? Wrong. Welcome to medieval times, where indoor plumbing doesn't exist, and using the bathroom is an adventure. One that's cold, dirty, and deeply humbling. You sit up, groggy and sore. The cottage is still dark, lit only by faint orange embers. The family's snoring around you. The goat is chewing something suspicious in its sleep. You quietly slip outside, tiptoeing like a thief through the damp grass. And now you're faced with the question, where exactly does one go? The answer is anywhere. Kind of. But also not really. Peasants use the edges of fields, forested corners, or, if they're lucky, a designated pit behind the house. Essentially a hole in the ground surrounded by buzzing flies and broken dreams. You find one such spot. It's rustic. A few wooden planks straddle the hole, slick with dew and regret. You brace yourself, trying not to slip or breathe. There's no privacy, no toilet paper, just a communal cloth nailed to a stick that gets rinsed in the stream once a week. Maybe. Historians still argue whether these rural setups were better or worse than what the towns had. Because those involved chamber pots, basically ceramic buckets kept under beds, emptied whenever someone remembered. Or didn't. You finish your business quickly and retreat, scarred. The air is thick with morning fog and a general sense of microbial warfare. You spot a woman up the road dumping her chamber pot out the window. It splashes onto the street with a sickening splat. No one blinks. You now walk very carefully. You make your way toward the market square. The early risers are already bustling. Bakers starting their ovens, vendors unloading carts, a pig running wild for reasons no one questions. But your stomach turns, not from the pottage, miracle of miracles, but because you need to go again. You look for a public facility. Spoiler, there isn't one. In cities, some wealthier areas might have communal latrines, multi-seater wooden benches perched over a cesspit. But you're in a small village. And right now, your options are go behind a bush and hope no one sees, or bribe your way into someone's barn. A boy passes by with a shovel. "You sick?" he asks, noting your expression. "Use the Lord's trench. It's deep." You don't ask questions. You just follow. The Lord's trench is indeed deep, dug at the edge of a pasture and mostly shielded by shrubs. It's used by field hands during long days of labor. There's a wooden pole for balance. That's it. You grip it, do what you have to, and try not to fall in. It's a delicate operation. Your dignity remains mostly intact. Quirky medieval fact. In some castles, guard robes, early toilets, were built as stone protrusions over outer walls, allowing waste to drop into the moat below. Theoretically convenient. Practically terrifying, especially when wind was involved. You're grateful not to be in a castle. By mid-morning, your nose is growing desensitized. Which is good, because the town reeks. Open gutters run through the center of the street, carrying a slow stream of grayish-brown liquid. People dump everything here. Food scraps, bathwater, bodily waste, dead rodents. Occasionally a child drops a toy in and mourns its swift, unsanitary journey downstream. You ask a vendor, naively, how people stay clean. He laughs, revealing half a tooth. Clean, we drink ale. And that, apparently, is the end of that. You spot a wealthier home and peek around the back. There's an actual outhouse, stone-walled with a wooden seat. Progress. You try to approach, but a servant glares at you, broom raised like a medieval lightsaber. You back away, not your social class, not your toilet. Historians still debate the exact frequency with which people in the Middle Ages cleaned themselves. Bathhouses existed, especially in larger towns, but they were often associated with, let's say, extra services. After the Black Death, most public bathhouses were shut down entirely, out of fear that heat and steam spread illness. So where does that leave you? Back at the stream, trying to discreetly splash your hands without gagging. You find a patch of moss and do your best. No soap, just hope. You return to the cottage, damp and defeated. The peasant woman offers you a stale crust of bread and a jug of cider. You accept both. You've earned it. As the day wears on, you notice people relieving themselves in corners, behind carts, and in the alleys. There's a system, unspoken, but respected. You avoid certain corners. So does everyone else, except the goat. Night falls again. The hearth crackles. You wonder once more where you'll go when nature calls. The chamber pot under the bed is already nearly full. You debate using it, but the memory of your morning adventure makes you hesitate. You wrap yourself tightly in your itchy blanket and stare at the ceiling, ears alert for the distant splash of a neighbor dumping their waste into the street. It's not romantic. It's not charming. It's just how things work. Modern plumbing is a marvel, a miracle, a thing you swear you'll never take for granted again. Until then, you hold it, breathe shallow, and try not to think about where the goat went. You wake with a tightness in your chest and a vague sense that something's off. Your throat is scratchy. Your head's pounding. You try to sit up, but a wave of dizziness hits you like a medieval ox cart. Oh no. You're sick. In medieval times. There's no thermometer, no cough syrup, no emergency room. Just a cold draft, a damp wool blanket, and a room full of people who eye your pale face with concern. But keep their distance. They've seen this before, too many times. The peasant woman presses a hand to your forehead, then shrugs. Hot. Maybe demons, she says, matter-of-factly. She reaches for a pouch of dried herbs and begins boiling water in a blackened pot. You're not sure if she's about to make you tea or perform an exorcism. Possibly both. Historians still argue whether medieval medicine was more superstition than science, or whether, in the absence of better knowledge, it was simply the best they could do. Either way, you're now the test subject. You're given a thick concoction made from sage, nettles, honey, and something that tastes like despair. It goes down reluctantly. The woman mutters a prayer as she ladles it into a wooden bowl. You thank her. She nods but doesn't touch you again. Outside, life goes on. Inside, you shiver under layers of patchy blankets. The fire crackles weakly. Every part of your body aches. You're running a fever, and your lips are cracked from dehydration. You reach for water, but remember yesterday's toilet situation. You put the cup down and pray for ale instead. Suddenly, the local healer arrives. A man in his 50s, wearing layers of patched robes and a necklace made of bones. Animal bones, hopefully. He kneels beside you, sniffs dramatically, and announces, "The humors are imbalanced." Of course they are. He explains your body contains 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Too much of anyone causes illness. You must be purged. You try to explain your modern take. Maybe it's just a virus, maybe some rest and fluids, but he's already reaching into his bag. Leeches. No, seriously. Leeches. He places 3 fat, wriggling things on your arm. You flinch, but it's too late. They're already feeding. The healer smiles, pleased. They like you, he says. You feel faint, and not just from blood loss. Quirky historical tidbit. Leech therapy was common for everything from headaches to broken bones. In fact, the demand was so high that leech collectors became an actual profession. Their job waded into swamps and let the creatures latch on. Retirement plan? Unclear. After the leeches, he burns a bundle of herbs and waves the smoke around your face to scare the sickness away. You cough violently. He's thrilled. The demons flee, he declares. You're pretty sure it's just lung irritation. Then he pulls out a small jar of powder and sprinkles some onto your tongue. It's chalky and sour, and you immediately regret all your life choices. Ground unicorn horn, he says proudly. You give him a look. He winks. Well, close enough. Historians still debate whether any patients actually believed in the magical properties of exotic ingredients, like powdered horn or mummified Egyptian remains. Yes, really. But exotic meant expensive, and expensive meant must be good. As the day passes, your fever worsens. You're sweating, then freezing, then sweating again. A child tiptoes over and places a rag on your forehead. You mutter a thank you, unsure if it's real or a hallucination. Later, a priest visits. Because in medieval Europe, sickness could also mean sin. You're offered last rites, just in case. He mumbles Latin over you and leaves a small cross on your pillow. It's not comforting. It's ominous. Someone starts boiling onions and garlic near your head. A folk remedy. The smell is both offensive and oddly nostalgic, like a sick room and a salad bar collided. You breathe shallowly and try not to vomit. Sleep comes in fits. You dream of sterile hospital rooms, smooth plastic IV tubes, and cold Sprite with a bendy straw. You wake to a spoonful of warm, gray broth being held to your lips. The goat stares at you from the corner, judgmental, silent. By the next morning, you're marginally better. Or maybe just too tired to care. The leeches are gone. The fever has broken. Or possibly moved on to someone else. Either way, you're alive. And in this time, that's practically a miracle. The healer returns. He nods approvingly. You've got strong bile, he says. You're too weak to correct him. The villagers cheer your survival. Quietly, of course. There's still a chance you'll relapse. But for now, you're one of the lucky ones. Many don't make it this far. You're allowed to sit up near the hearth. The peasant woman hands you a cup of ale and a bit of bread. It tastes better than anything you've ever eaten. You chew slowly, savoring every bite, every swallow, every moment. Quirky detail. Some towns kept jars of urine for medical inspection. Luckily, no one asked for yours. Small blessings. You curl up again under your blanket, aching but grateful. The fire is warm. The goat has stopped staring. And for the first time in days, you think you might actually live. Barely. You're finally on your feet again, shaky, sore, and still trailing a faint scent of boiled nettle and despair, but upright nonetheless. The villagers seem relieved to see you walking, not out of affection, but because you're no longer a contagious liability. Today you're invited, well, dragged, to a communal dinner. It's a big event, as far as peasant life goes. The whole village gathers in the common square, everyone contributing what they can, which you quickly realize isn't much. The table looks like a crime scene, committed by a salad with abandonment issues. Let's talk food. Real food. Not the fantasy feast with gleaming turkey legs and bread baked into the shape of castles. You sit down expecting at least some roast meat, maybe a stew that doesn't smell like wet burlap. What you get is chewy. You bite into a piece of meat, that might once have been a pigeon, or a rat, or a very confused squirrel. It's tough, stringy, and tastes like regret marinated in smoke. You chew carefully, still haunted by the medieval dental trauma, but it fights back. And then you notice what's actually moving around you. Lice, fleas, a beetle on someone's crust of bread. One man cheerfully flicks a worm off his turnip and keeps eating. He offers you a bite. You decline so fast you nearly pull a muscle. Welcome to dinner with parasites. Hope you brought an appetite and a strong stomach. Quirky fact. People in the Middle Ages referred to lice as body sugar. Not because it was sweet, obviously, but because everyone had it. It was so normal that picking lice off your loved one was considered a bonding activity. Think of it as the medieval version of a couple's massage. As you stare into your bowl of thick, gray pottage, a girl next to you pulls a long hair, possibly human, possibly horse, out of hers and sets it aside like a garnish. She's unfazed. You try not to make eye contact with your soup. Bread is the main event. Thick, dark loaves made from barley, rye, and sawdust. Yes, sawdust. Bakers patted the flour when supplies ran low. It's chewy, crumbly, and sharp enough to sand a table. But you eat it, because the alternative is hunger. Or whatever's in that bubbling pot in the corner that smells like boiled shoe. Historians still argue whether the average peasant diet was more nutritious than we give it credit for. Heavy on fiber, sure, but low in vital nutrients, especially iron. What they agree on, it was monotonous. If you liked onions and root vegetables, congrats. You're in culinary heaven. A boy brings out a dessert tray. Just dried apples and a lump of what looks like honeycomb, but tastes like dirt-flavored candle wax. Everyone claps politely. You do too, though mostly to stop your hands from twitching. Suddenly, there's a shout of delight. Someone's brought cheese. A round of soft white cheese is passed around like a holy relic. You take a tiny nibble, then freeze. It's sour, runny, and definitely alive. It wriggles slightly on your tongue. You try not to scream. Here's a fun tidbit. In some places, cheese was intentionally made with living larvae. Casu marzu, they called it in later centuries. Yes, maggot cheese. It was considered a delicacy. You consider hurling. Next comes the ale. Weak, flat, and slightly sour, but safer than water. You sip slowly. It tastes like barley and survival. The man next to you drinks 4 cups and begins telling a story about the time he wrestled a goose for his supper. No one questions him. Apparently, this is believable. You hear others around the table chatting, mostly about food. Who has turnips this year? Who lost their crop to deer? Who might have extra barley if the priest doesn't confiscate it for a holy feast? The only thing more constant than parasites here is food insecurity. There's laughter too. Genuine, warm, and tired. You realize they don't hate the meal. It's what they have. And after a hard day in the field, even soggy bread with worm protein is better than an empty bowl. Still, as the evening stretches on, you can't help but notice your skin crawling again. You scratch absent-mindedly. Behind your ear, something tiny wriggles. You excuse yourself politely, sprint behind the cottage, and frantically delouse like a panicked squirrel in a rainstorm. You vow to burn your tunic if you make it out of this. Back at the square, a woman offers you a bowl of something steaming. "Pig's feet stew," she says proudly. You glance inside. It's mostly bone, gelatin, and mystery. You manage one polite spoonful. It jiggles ominously. You nod in gratitude and hand it off to a passing dog who sniffs it and walks away. Parasites aside, it's not all grim. Someone brings out a lute. A young girl sings a song about a lady who turned into a duck and flew away from her chores. People laugh. The fire crackles. For a brief moment, you forget about the lice. Almost. until someone mentions the upcoming fast. Tomorrow's a holy day, which means no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no fat, just bread, water, and prayers. You suppress a groan. Your stomach, insulted by tonight's offerings, growls defiantly. You try to shush it with another cup of ale. As the gathering winds down, people drift back to their cottages. You do the same, scratching gently, skin still tingling with imagined or real critters. You settle onto your straw bedding, trying not to think of the cheese, or the stew, or the moving bread. Sleep comes slowly. And when it does, your dreams are full of dancing worms and a goat in a chef's hat whispering, "Bon appétit." You wake up still scratching. At this point, it's not even clear whether you have lice, fleas, or just a psychological bond with imaginary bugs. Either way, your skin is staging a rebellion. But today, you decide to focus on something different, something you haven't dared to try yet. Being social. That's right. You're going to mingle, make a friend. Maybe even find someone who doesn't think you're a demon with poor table manners. You step into the village square with a smile. Immediately, a woman scowls at you. A child throws a pebble at your shoe. The goat follows you again. You take a deep breath. Social life in the Middle Ages, not exactly welcoming. Let's start with class. You, in your ragged, borrowed tunic and dubious hygiene, are considered the lowest of the low. You don't own land. You're not part of a guild. And you have zero family connections. That makes you suspicious, or worse, invisible. You try talking to the blacksmith. He grunts, nods once, and then goes back to hammering like you've never existed. You wave to the baker's wife. She turns away. You compliment someone's bonnet, and she immediately accuses you of sweet talking. You're off to a terrible start. Historians still argue whether social mobility was completely impossible or merely extremely unlikely. In theory, a clever peasant could rise in status by marrying well, saving coin, or heroically surviving a plague. But let's be honest, you're none of those things. Not yet. You try to understand the social rules. One man explains it like this. You wear wool, you're a peasant. You wear silk, you're arrested. It's all in the sumptuary laws, rules that dictated who could wear what, eat what, and even think what, based on status. You could be fined just for dressing too nicely. Fashion. But make it punishable by law. Feeling deflated, you sit on a barrel. A traveling minstrel joins you. He strums a lute and offers a dry turnip chip. You accept. Progress. He tells you about life on the road. Wandering from village to village, singing for scraps and dodging angry priests. He admits people only really like him when he sings songs about local scandals. Who kissed whom behind the granary, or whose goat keeps getting loose and raiding the bishop's cabbage patch. Quirky medieval fact. Social gatherings were often dictated by religious calendars. Feast days, saints' birthdays, and local festivals offered rare chances to celebrate and let loose. But even these were tightly controlled. Dancing was sometimes banned, music censored, and too much fun might get you a stern lecture about eternal damnation. You ask about romance. The minstrel laughs so hard he snorts. Romance, that's for troubadours and nobles. We've got arranged marriages, dowries, and quiet misery. He leans in. But sometimes, after a harvest festival, things get interesting. You try to imagine flirting in this world. No texting, no profile pics, just hoping someone notices you standing near the fire with decent teeth and not too many boils. You attempt to smile at a girl carrying eggs. She drops one, frowns at you, and walks away. The goat stares disapprovingly. You find out there's a tavern, a meeting place, a potential social hub. You head there cautiously. Inside, it's loud. Dark, smoky, people drink from wooden mugs and shout at each other with what might be joy or rage. Hard to tell. You order a small ale, and the innkeeper eyes you suspiciously but serves it. You sit near the hearth. A group of men arm wrestle. Another plays dice, betting with dried peas. You try to make conversation, mentioning how much you enjoy pottage. They stare. One leans in and asks if you're a spy. You laugh. They don't. So you listen instead. You hear about the neighbor who was caught hoarding grain, about the widow who might be a witch because her cat looked at the moon, about the boy who found a two-headed frog and now thinks he's blessed. Small talk, medieval style. A man tells you about his pilgrimage. 3 weeks of walking through mud to see a holy toenail. His feet bled. His brother got dysentery. He says it was transcendent. You nod politely. Another tells you how he was fined for cutting firewood on the wrong day. His crime, stealing from the Lord's forest. You ask if there's a difference between the Lord's trees and everyone else's. He doesn't laugh. You stop asking questions. Historians still debate how much interaction occurred between peasants and nobility on a daily basis. Some say it was constant, through taxes, work, and church. Others believe the classes lived in almost parallel realities. You're starting to think it's more like opposing planets. You try dancing when the music picks up. It's a clunky, shuffling sort of thing, half stomping, half lurching. No one seems to know the steps, but that's half the charm. You finally make eye contact with someone, a young man missing 2 teeth and wearing a tunic that used to be white. You both grin. For one glorious moment, you fit in. Then someone yells, "Fight!" and a table crashes. The tavern erupts. You duck instinctively. A mug sails past your head. Someone punches someone else with surprising grace. The minstrel keeps playing. Business as usual. You slip out into the night air, heart racing, tunic beer-soaked. That went better than expected. Sure, you didn't make any lasting friends. And yes, someone might have cursed your name in Old French. But you danced. You didn't get stabbed. And you only got accused of witchcraft once. Social victory. Back at the cottage, the fire's low. The goat sighs dramatically as you step over it. You lie down, exhausted, making friends in the Middle Ages. Harder than turnip farming. You close your eyes, dreaming of DMs, emojis, and scene notifications. You miss awkward small talk at coffee shops. You miss texting LOL instead of being accused of demonic possession when you laugh at the wrong moment. But tonight you connected, briefly, violently, but it counts. You're awakened by bells again. Different this time. Brighter, clangier, like someone smacking a pot with a spoon. It's market day. You've heard whispers about it all week. The one day when merchants, farmers, tinkers, beggars, pickpockets, clergy, livestock, entertainers, and the town's entire supply of noise come together in a chaotic symphony of mud and barter. You drag yourself from the cottage, sore from straw and socializing. You're still itchy, thanks lice, still hungry, thanks pottage, but determined. Maybe today, in the market, you'll find a piece of this world that doesn't actively try to kill you. You follow the crowd into the town square, which has transformed overnight. Tents flap in the breeze, carts overflow with goods, and a pig in a ribbon trots past you like it owns the place. You marvel, briefly, before sidestepping a bucket of fish heads. Let's talk medieval commerce. Everything is for sale, but nothing has a price tag. Transactions happen through loud haggling, suspicious squinting, and occasionally, veiled insults. You try asking how much a bundle of onions costs. The seller laughs and tells you, for you, a favor and a secret. You don't even know what that means. You move on. The air is a cocktail of scents. Baking bread, sweaty humanity, dried herbs, manure, rotting meat, wet dog. There's something oddly festive about it, like a Renaissance fair that forgot it was supposed to be fun. You pass a spice vendor. one of the most glamorous booths here. He's surrounded by tiny sacks of saffron, pepper, and cinnamon, guarded like gold. He lets you smell a clove and then shoos you away before you develop poor person thoughts. You blink away a sneeze and continue. Quirky historical tidbit. Black pepper was so valuable in the Middle Ages that it was used as currency. People paid rents with it, dowries too. Peppercorn rent wasn't just a figure of speech, it was your landlord's weird dinner garnish. You stop at a cloth merchant's table. Rough wool, coarse linen, a scrap of faded blue that might once have been silk. You brush your fingers over it. "That's imported," he says proudly, "from a land where people wear perfume." You weep softly inside. A young boy offers to shine your shoes for a coin. You look down at your mud-caked, goat-bitten medieval footwear and decline. He grins, then vanishes into the crowd like smoke. You check your pocket. Gone. He's taken your last turnip chip. You've been pickpocketed. Historians still argue whether crime in medieval markets was as rampant as literature suggests, or if the occasional theft was exaggerated for drama. Based on your current turnipless hand, it feels very real. You try browsing a cart stacked with candles, waxy and lopsided. The merchant leans in. Tallow, fresh, only slightly rancid. Keep the demons away. You're unsure if that's a selling point or a threat. In the next row, a man is selling holy relics. You take a closer look. One is a finger bone, probably not human. One is a vial of cloudy water labeled Tears of St. Bertha. Another appears to be a potato. He claims it looks like the Virgin Mary. You nod, impressed by the confidence. You stop for a breather near the livestock section. Bad choice. You're immediately mooed at, bleated at, and lightly nibbled by a goose. A cow sneezes on your shoulder. A sheep looks at you like it knows your secrets. You try to pet a donkey and get brayed at so loudly your ears ring. A man laughs and says, "She doesn't like outsiders." You nod. "Neither do most people," you mutter. You attempt to buy an apple. The vendor eyes your clothes. "Coin," he asks. You offer to trade a favor. He suggests mucking out his stable. You move on. The town crier shouts the latest news. The mill's broken again. Someone's goose went missing. Oh. And the priest will be giving an extra sermon on sin tonight. The crowd groans. Market day ends early when the priest talks too long. A group of performers gathers near the center. Jugglers, a man on stilts, a fiddler playing a tune that sounds suspiciously like Mary Had a Little Lamb, if Mary were a widow and the lamb cursed. Children laugh. Adults clap politely. You smile for real, until a fire breather nearly singes your eyebrows off. Close call. You wander toward the edges of the market, where the shadier vendors lurk. A woman offers potions. Love, sleep, invisibility. All made from herbs and dreams. You ask what's in the bottle labeled Quick Death. She winks. Good for rats. You pass a scribe offering letters, contracts, and love poetry on demand. You ask how much for a poem about a goat who steals hearts and turnips. He begins writing before you finish the sentence. That one's for the memories. Quirky fact. Not everyone at market could read, but some carried marks. Tiny symbols they'd use instead of signatures. You see one man sign a debt by drawing a chicken foot in the dirt. Efficient. The sun begins to lower. The market winds down. Vendors pack up. The pig in the ribbon wins a dance contest. You consider staying for the public sermon, but decide you've suffered enough. You return to the cottage with empty hands and a slightly fuller soul. You didn't make any purchases, but you did survive the pickpockets, avoid the herbalist, and witness a sheep headbutt a merchant into a barrel of honey. As you lie down, you realize something strange. For a few hours, you felt alive. Lost, itchy, mildly terrified, but present. The market may be chaotic, smelly, and corrupt, but it's also human. Messy, hilarious, irrationally optimistic. You scratch your ankle and find a flea. It jumps away triumphant. You sigh. That's fine. He probably paid rent. The next morning begins with a bell. Not the clangy market bell or the town crier's saucepan symphony, but a slow, solemn toll from the church tower. It echoes across the misty fields like a divine alarm clock with no snooze button. You wake groggy, still sore from yesterday's market expedition and vaguely haunted by the potato that looked like the Virgin Mary. You stretch, yawn, and realize something's different. The village is quiet. Too quiet. No hammering from the blacksmith, no shouting from neighbors, no goat gnawing on your shoe. Today is Sunday, or possibly a saint's day, or both. It doesn't really matter. The church says today is holy, which means you are about to get very familiar with religion, whether you like it or not. Right? The peasant family you've been staying with is already dressed in their best, meaning slightly less stained, slightly more mended tunics. The father adjusts a crude wooden cross around his neck. The mother pins her wimple a little tighter. Even the goat's been washed. You feel wildly underprepared. You walk with them toward the stone church on the hill. It looms above the village like a fortress of eternal judgment. It's cold, damp, and smells like wax, wet stone, and whatever incense they last burned during a funeral. Inside, the pews are hard, the lighting dim, and the priest already mid-sermon. You try to slip in unnoticed, but the creaky wooden floorboards immediately betray you. Heads turn. One child whispers, "The sick one's back." You sit, try to focus. The priest's Latin chants drone on, echoing off the vaulted ceiling in a way that makes everything sound 20% more terrifying. You catch the occasional word: sin, hellfire, lepers, boiling oil. Comforting stuff. Historians still argue how much medieval Europeans understood of the religious services. Most villagers didn't speak Latin, but they still showed up, out of obligation, habit, or fear that skipping might result in eternal doom, or at least a fine. You sit through a reading of some obscure parable that seems to involve goats. You feel targeted. The sermon ends, and the priest launches into a list of sinners. Out loud. Publicly. Martha, for vanity. Thomas, for skipping prayers. That boy with the goose. Again. Everyone nods solemnly, including the goose owner, who shrugs. Religion isn't just part of life here. It is life. Birth, marriage, death, farming, illness, weather, taxes. Everything ties back to the church. It owns land. It collects tithes. It hands out punishments. Question it, and you don't just risk a stern talking to. You risk excommunication, exile, or a trial by fire. Literally. You hear whispers that someone in the next village was accused of heresy because they didn't cross themselves before sneezing. The standard's flexible. You survive the service? Barely. Your knees are numb from kneeling on stone. Your ears ring with psalms. Your soul feels slightly more judged than before. But it's not over yet. Because now comes the real reason most villagers show up: gossip. Outside the church, everyone gathers in little clusters. The priest is busy inspecting tithes. A basket of eggs here, a handful of grain there. You overhear debates about whether a new well is cursed. Someone claims to have seen a goat with 2 tails. You don't even react anymore. You wander into the churchyard. Tombstones lean like tired sentinels. Most are unmarked, just lumps of stone, if that. Some graves are shared. You wonder what your headstone would say here. Probably, "The itchy foreigner, may God have mercy." Quirky medieval fact. Burials inside the church walls were reserved for the wealthy and holy. Being buried close to the altar supposedly gave you a spiritual leg up in the afterlife. The rest? Well, the closer you were to the back fence, the worse your eternal Wi-Fi signal. You overhear a discussion about indulgences. Apparently for a few coins, or maybe a chicken, you can shave time off your stay in purgatory. The concept makes your modern brain ache. You consider bartering your remaining lice for a few extra days in heaven. Later that day, you're pulled into a procession. The priest leads it, carrying a relic, perhaps a bone from some long-dead saint, or maybe another decorative potato. The villagers chant. You try to blend in. It's all part of the church's hold. Religion isn't just belief, it's control. It shapes your calendar, your wardrobe, your sex life, your meals. No meat on Fridays, no fun on feast days, and absolutely no dancing unless it's approved and accompanied by sufficiently depressing music. Historians still debate whether medieval Europeans were truly devout or simply scared out of their minds. You're leaning toward the latter. After all, if every thunderstorm is a punishment and every illness a test, you'd probably cling to the nearest relic, too. Back at the cottage, the family kneels for evening prayer. You do your best to mimic them. Cross yourself. Mumble respectfully. Try not to sneeze. The goat watches solemnly. Dinner is meatless. The children ask if fish counts. The mother explains that fish are allowed, but frogs don't qualify. The line between theology and biology is blurry. You eat quietly, still half numb from kneeling. The father begins reciting a psalm by heart, his voice low and gravelly. The fire crackles. For a moment the room feels soft, sacred, strangely peaceful. You curl up in your itchy blanket, reflecting on the day. The church owns your schedule, your money, your soul. But it also gives this rough, uncertain world a sense of order. Without it, everything would collapse. Then again, with it, everything's still pretty rough, just sanctified. You drift off to sleep, dreaming of pews, potato saints, and a goat-shaped angel whispering, "Confess your turnip theft." You awaken in the dead of night, disoriented and unsure why. There's no sound, no movement, just the crackle of the hearth's dying embers and the soft rustle of straw as the goat shifts in its sleep. And yet, something feels wrong. You sit up slowly, heart thudding. The cottage is nearly pitch black. No lamps, no glowing screens. Just shapes in the darkness and the sharp awareness that medieval nighttime isn't peaceful, it's dangerous. You listen. The silence is so deep it presses against your ears. Then a distant howl. Not a dog. Lower, throaty. That's either a wolf or someone imitating one with alarming accuracy. You inch closer to the fire and add a log, praying it doesn't smoke too much, and draw attention to your cozy, goat-adjacent location. Nighttime in this era isn't just for sleeping. It's when all the things people fear come out to play. With no streetlights, no electricity, and no neighborhood watch beyond a prayer and a shovel, the darkness belongs to shadows, superstition, and people who'd rather not be seen. You remember a story the peasant boy told earlier? Of demons that roam at dusk, of spirits that steal warmth from your breath, and of a headless monk who walks through the village once a month looking for his donkey. You laughed then. You're not laughing now. You try to lie back down. You fail. Your ears are on high alert for every creak, whistle, or crunch outside the thin wooden walls. Quirky historical tidbit. Some villagers used to sleep in shifts. The first sleep began at sundown, and after waking sometime after midnight, people would pray, think, snack, or, if they had privacy, get frisky. Then came the second sleep. You're currently between the two, in that strange, liminal space space where the world feels like it's holding its breath. And then, a thud outside. You freeze. It's followed by a low scraping. Maybe an animal, maybe not. Historians still debate whether burglaries were common or just overfeared. What's certain is that homes were barely secure. A strong kick could turn a cottage into an open-concept floor plan. Locks were rare. Trust was thinner. You reach for the only weapon nearby, a piece of slightly stale bread. It's sharp enough to do damage if thrown precisely into someone's eye socket. You pray it doesn't come to that. The peasant father stirs, groggy but calm. It's the wind, he mutters, rolling over. Brave. Or just too tired to care. You, on the other hand, are planning escape routes and wondering if the goat would make a good distraction. But nothing happens. The noise fades. You breathe. And just when you think you might sleep again, clang! A loud metallic crash, followed by hurried footsteps. You jump up. Out the narrow window, you spot shadows running down the path. Not ghosts, not demons. People. Probably thieves. Maybe worse. The father is awake now. He grabs a heavy stick and opens the door. You follow instinctively, then immediately regret it. Outside, the cold wraps around you like wet cloth. The thieves are gone. Just churned up dirt and the faint smell of smoke where someone tried and failed to burn a food cart near the square. You return inside, heart racing. The door is barred with a wooden plank. That's all you get for protection. A plank in your bread shiv. You lie down again, this time keeping one eye open. It's not just the people you fear. Night invites other things too. Wild animals, for one. Wolves were real threats, especially in winter when they crept closer to villages in search of easy meals. Sheep, chickens, the occasional unlucky traveler. You remember hearing that some towns hung wolf heads on poles to scare off others? Whether it worked is unclear. Whether it's gruesome is not. You shiver. The embers dim. The dark feels heavier than it did yesterday. There are no curtains. Just wooden shutters closed tightly over the windows. But a gap lets in moonlight. And for a brief moment, your reflection catches in a pewter dish on the wall. You nearly scream. Just your face. Pale, wide-eyed, possibly haunted. Another quirky medieval practice, night charms. Trinkets hung by the bed to ward off evil spirits. Dried herbs, bones, painted symbols. One girl swore by a piece of garlic and a blessed rock. You briefly wish you had one, or 10. You doze off eventually, drifting in and out of shallow, twitchy sleep. Your dreams are chaotic. Goats in armor, shadowy figures whispering Latin, a floating bowl of pottage that tries to smother you. You wake up again before dawn. The cottage is cold, silent, but nothing seems out of place. Still, you feel changed, like you've passed through something, or like something passed through you. Night in the Middle Ages isn't a cozy 8 hours with a weighted blanket. It's a gauntlet of noises, nightmares, and the creeping certainty that the dark isn't empty. It's just waiting. And when the rooster crows, loud, nasal, victorious, you feel relief flood your bones. You've survived the night. Again. But barely. You stagger outside into the misty pre-dawn chill. The world looks different in the gray light. Softer. Less threatening. The thief tracks are gone. The shadows have melted. But you still carry the weight of the dark inside you. You whisper a small thanks. Not to a saint, not to the goat, just to the sun for coming back. Because in this world, it always feels like it might not. You wake to a peculiar quiet. Not the eerie, heart-racing kind of silence you endured last night, but the soft hush of a misty morning, where even the birds seem to tread lightly. Your joints protest as you sit up, your back stiff, your legs sore, and your soul slightly bruised. You've been here for how long days, weeks? A medieval eternity. You've trudged through filth, survived parasite picnics, endured goat judgment, and even flirted, badly, with the Black Death. But today, your journey comes to its most inevitable conclusion. You're going to die. Don't take it personally. Everyone dies here. Often young, usually unexpectedly, and almost always from something completely preventable. A stubbed toe could turn gangrenous. A sneeze could mean smallpox. A bad oyster game over. It begins with a headache. You think, not again. Then your stomach lurches. You feel hot and cold at once. The peasant woman frowns as she presses your forehead. Not the fever again, she mutters. She glances toward the village square. Priest will be here soon. You lie back, breath shallow. There's no hospital, no ambulance, just whispered prayers and lukewarm onion tea. The healer is summoned. He arrives an hour later with his pouch of powders and confident uncertainty. Could be humors, he says, or moon imbalance, or worms. He places a hand on your chest, listens to your ragged breath, and nods gravely. Prepare them, he tells the woman. You try to protest. You are not dying from a mystery salad and a lack of Wi-Fi. But your words barely come out. You're too tired, too heavy, too done. Quirky historical tidbit. Medieval death rituals varied, but many believed that dying without confession doomed your soul. That's why priests were rushed to sickbeds, to hear final words and offer last rites before the spirit could slip away unblessed. You cough. The priest appears. It's the same one who gave you side-eye during your last confession. He doesn't gloat, just looks tired. He mumbles something in Latin, dabs oil on your forehead, and asks if you renounce sin. You try to nod. One eyelid droops. You vaguely remember stealing half a turnip chip. You repent deeply. The children peek in to see the dying foreigner. You hear them whispering, will he come back as a ghost? Will the goat inherit his blanket? The goat snorts. The healer returns with a leech, just one, for tradition. He slaps it on your neck. It falls off immediately. Even the parasite knows you're done. You drift in and out. Someone sings. You're not sure if it's a lullaby or a hymn. The goat licks your hand, surprisingly sweet. And then, nothing. You're dead. Well, medieval dead. Which means you lie still long enough for everyone to agree it's over. And then things move very quickly. There's no funeral director, no embalming, just a few strong lads with shovels, a linen shroud, and a mildly used coffin. You suspect it's been repurposed. The priest reads a short prayer. Someone tries to cry. The goat sneezes. They bury you at the edge of the graveyard, near the fence, not the premium altar-adjacent real estate. You weren't a landowner, or a saint, or even especially clean. But you did contribute at least half a row of turnips and one slightly cursed pilgrimage. Historians still debate how carefully burial grounds were organized. Some say records were kept meticulously. Others point out that during plagues, bodies were buried in layers, quickly, quietly, anonymously. Your grave marker is a stone, just a plain rock. No name, no inscription. Maybe someone scratches foreign visitor on it later. Maybe not. You won't know. Your tunic gets passed down. Your lice find a new host. The peasant children remember you as the funny one who feared the cheese. The goat steals your blanket. You fade from memory as quickly as you arrived. That's just how it works here. But before the final whisper of your story fades into the medieval dust, the villagers start a fire. They need kindling. And wouldn't you know it? The old boards from the inn's broken door, your old bed spot, burn real nicely. And just like that, your history. And now, listener, as the last candle flickers and the cold stone walls of that strange, itchy world fade from view, your breath softens. The rough woolen tunic loosens its grip. The weight of fleas, fears, and 4 days of raw onions begins to lift. You're back, slowly, quietly, gently, back in your soft, clean bed with your phone plugged in and your toothpaste capped. No rats, no night demons, just the gentle hum of a fan, the creak of the ceiling, and the warmth of a world where toilets flush and beds don't bite. You've made it through plague, pottage, and the peasant life. You've seen the weight of a world where life was brutal and brief, yet filled with laughter, legend, and the stubborn kind of hope only humans carry. So take one last breath, full and deep, and let it out slowly. The flickering torches fade. The goat stops judging you. The church bells grow faint. Even the lice, bless their itchy little souls, have said their goodbyes. And now there is only quiet. You are safe. You are home. You are warm. Let your limbs grow heavy. Let your thoughts slow like footsteps on a muddy path at dusk. Let the dark hold you gently, not like the medieval night, but like a hush between lullabies. You don't need to dig turnips tomorrow. You don't have to explain pottage to anyone. You just need to sleep. So rest and drift and dream of a world where you always have soap, snacks, and absolutely no leeches. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.